Hi, welcome back to Fresh Faces New Ideas. My name is David, and if you like what I do and you'd like to support me, please like and subscribe this video, or follow me on Twitter at Faces Ideas. You can also hear me on the Center Left Radio podcast on Fridays. So this video is going to be about immigration. So currently there is an influx at the border. There is a problem there. We have a deeper immigration problem, but the border is where it is being established. That's where the current draw is. So part of the reason this is because the party in power generally has immigration as is used as a wedge. For both parties. The Republican Party in the last couple of years has used it more aggressively as a wedge, especially under Donald Trump. So what is currently happening is we are seeing a massive influx in migrants coming across the border. Now, those migrants are generally children or they're unaccompanied minors. So there's a whole bunch of things that are happening. Currently, we have around 4,000 children in detention camps in order to, house them. This would be a 20-year high. The other thing is there appears to be more immigrants coming in general. So there's a couple of reasons for this. Why is this happening? There's a whole lot of reasons for immigration in general. Climate change is a big one, and the worse climate change gets, the more refugees there's going to be. This has been proven in study after study. They said there's going to be climate refugees. That's just how it is. Poverty and gang-related violence, pandemic-related issues that caused a loss of revenue for certain countries. Those are part of the things that would force people to make these type of treks. That's one of the other things is it's a removal from the Remain in Mexico policy. Is a change to Title 42, so things like this, and just a different change in who's president from Donald Trump's just anti-immigration entirety of his rhetoric. So some of the things that cause this problem are under the Trump administration, there used to be a rule that you could apply for asylum in the different embassies in our country. Donald Trump removed that rule so that you couldn't apply for asylum, because part of what Donald Trump's and Stephen Miller's goal was to remove all immigration. They cut down on legal immigration to record lows. They cut down on just visas in general. So one of the other problems that Joe Biden is facing is who gets visas, is whether students who are applying for visas aren't getting them renewed. Businessmen and people who are coming to work for different companies and stuff aren't getting them renewed. So this is one of the problems. And part of this stems from the fact that the Trump administration, through executive order, through policy decision, or just from having certain people in these positions, made somewhere between 400 and 1,000 changes to our immigration system, just through those means. So keep in mind, the Biden transition started slow. The Trump transition blocked them from getting all this information originally. Then all his nominees, he doesn't yet have nominees or would have been confirmed for Border Protection and ICE and Border Patrol. So the reason those aren't happening is because for the first 3 weeks of the Biden administration, the Republicans were in charge of the Senate because they couldn't come to a power sharing agreement. So they held everything up. I mean, Merrick Garland's the AG. He just got confirmed last week. The Interior Secretary just got confirmed yesterday. Deb Haaland just got confirmed yesterday. So a lot of things he's getting with are slowed. So dealing with these type of crises is going to be slow. Secretary Mayorkas just got confirmed relatively recently. He's currently looking at what's going on, and they're going to start creating changes. So one of the other things is ICE itself is a problem, because the Biden administration, one of the first things they did was they said, okay, we're going to put a 100-day ban on deportations. We're gonna stop deportation for a while so we can get a grip on what is going on, so we can just review everything that you're doing. This is partly because under ICE, under the Trump administration, they were deporting children. They lost dozens and dozens of children. They were just deporting people who had any type of just being a legal immigrant, which is currently a misdemeanor. They would just deport them for that, regardless of how long you'd been here, regardless of anything. They would just deport them. So part of what they did was they said, okay, we're going to put this moratorium on on deportations, and I said, no, we're not going to do that. And then they just kept deporting people anyway. They've deported 100 people to Haiti. So part of the issues the Biden administration is going to have to deal with is reconciling with ICE, because even under the Obama administration, they would go against Obama's orders, and the Trump administration basically let them go do whatever they wanted. So there's that. So part of the other things that is causing this current problem is a combination of Trump and the Biden administration dealing with things. So one of the things are a change in our asylum law. So the Donald Trump administration did not want to have asylum, period. So they would just regularly ignore that we add asylum cases. They would hold people indefinitely, breaking the Flores rule, which says that you have 72 hours, basically how long you'd hold them. And they regularly say we would hold them longer than that. They also didn't put the resources into processing cases. So we already had a backlog prior to this current surge, and because the whole Trump administration was the zero tolerance policy. They were removing kids from their families in order to make it, unattainable for them, or make it more difficult. The cruelty was the point, to make it so that people would not come to this country, because if you came here illegally, they were just going to rip your kids away from you, and you were just going to be detained indefinitely. Part of the problem is with this new surge and the change in Title 42. So what Title 42 does is it's a health regulation. So because of the pandemic, the Trump administration said if you cross the border under any circumstances, you're going to be deported. What the Biden administration has done is it says if you're an adult or you're a family, you'll still get deported. But if you're an unaccompanied minor, which is a different set of rules, we're going to house you. So what currently happens is they're housed under Border Patrol, and they're shifted to DHS. And DHS's job is to find them sponsors in order to put the children with sponsors who would take care of them until they got their asylum hearings, or they applied for citizenship, or however this worked. That was originally the plan, but because the Trump administration did not push for that, or they would push for it in places where they would just let them go to these sponsors who would abuse them, there was a backlog in the system. So now we have more backlog on top of that. Part of the problem that the Biden administration did was reopen these same Trump facilities. And the problem with that is they're incredibly expensive, and by privatizing it, you're going to mean that it's going to cost significantly more. As I've covered in my earlier videos, it costs something like $700 a day to house these kids in these facilities. It would be much cheaper, and it would be significantly more cost efficient if they put hotels in charge of this. If they had actual service workers who trained hotel staff, especially during the pandemic, to pay hotels to take these kids, and they can give them a per diem, and it would cost significantly less and be more efficient. So what can be done? So currently, what has been done is they're trying to move it to different facilities. There's a Dallas Convention Center that's going to hold about 3,000 of these migrant children. President Biden sent FEMA down in order to help process them. So a lot of the problem currently is not the numbers that are coming across. The numbers are coming across because of the backlog. That's why these numbers look so big. But the real problem is the processing. If we can get these kids out fast enough, the backlog won't be as bad. So the regular processing is you need to be in and out in 3 days. That's usually how it works. However, because these resources aren't there and they haven't been pushed to this area, it's taking somewhere between 5 and 8 days, which isn't a huge problem if you're getting out more kids than you're getting in. But because we're getting this influx of migrants, they're backing up. So that's how these kids are ending up in unsanitary conditions, where there's not adequate food, where there's not adequate bathing. This is part of the problem. So part of the solution is getting FEMA and processing these kids faster. And I've talked about this on Center Left Radio. Other people have talked about this plenty. One of the ways to do this is to increase the number of judges that we have who can look at these asylum cases and increase just the resources to this area. Another thing the Biden administration does, they've made it very clear to people, is like, listen, we're not open for business. This goes against the grain of what the Republican argument is the Joe Biden administration is saying that we have an open border and anyone can come across as they want. This is not true. That is not a policy that's happened. That is not a thing that Joe Biden has said. But that's what they're arguing. That's not what's happening. And this is actually hurting the messaging because people hear things say, oh, we have an open border and they're going to come. As opposed to the actual message that the Joe Biden administration is pushing out, which is do not come now. We're dealing with too much. It's in a pandemic. We're still sorting through things. We're still trying to figure out what's what and make things, better for the people who are trying to process and come in through our immigration system. Currently he hasn't had time to deal with the visas. So colleges are losing billions of dollars. 1 in 7 students at the University of Massachusetts has a foreign visa. So that's money that they're not getting. So that's one of the big problems. So a lot of this is shifting through what the Trump administration does and either undoing it by executive order or by policy change or fighting it in the courts or stop fighting in the courts because there are currently court cases that the Trump administration had brought that the Biden administration hasn't stopped yet. So he has to go through a lot of the previous things that the Trump administration started. So they are telling people do not come, contrary to the Republicans saying, we have an open border and he just said end it. Furthermore, there's this Republican argument of, he pulled down the wall and that's why it is. So as I mentioned in previous videos, there was no wall. The 99.9% of all the border security and the wall stuff that was done under the Donald Trump presidency was just fixing previous wall. I think it was like 18 miles of wall was finished, period. So depending on which Trump speech you heard, the wall was either being built, had 100 miles, 200 miles, or, done. Whatever, depending on whatever Trump speech you listen to. So there was no wall. So their argument is, Joe Biden has stopped production on the wall, which is not true. What Joe Biden did was he stopped monies that the Trump administration took that wasn't. So originally Donald Trump said Mexico is going to pay for the wall. That didn't happen under any circumstances. So what happened was he reallocated money from the Pentagon in order to pay for his wall. What Joe Biden did is he said any money that wasn't given to you by Congress, because Congress has the power of the purse, that's how our government works, they're in charge of allocating money. So any money that wasn't allocated by Congress is now frozen until there's a review on it so that we can figure out where that money should be, because this is not a legal process that can happen. One of the other things that the Trump administration did that the Biden administration is reversing is aid. So part of the reason, as I mentioned before, that these people are coming here is because of dire situations in their own countries and dealing with poverty or other things like that. Other countries want to work with America. So one of the things the Biden administration do is revamping our aid. So the argument against this always is, well, why are we helping other countries when we don't help ourselves? There's two problems to this. One, when you push for actual helping people, there's always one side that yells, "Oh, that's socialism," or "Oh, you're spending too much," or "Oh, they don't deserve it." The other thing is putting aid into these countries isn't even a lot of aid. It's somewhere between $20 and $100 billion, which sounds like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge amount of money. But doing that allows us to change how our border patrol is, which is a massive drain of money. It's just a huge drain, and it isn't an efficient use of money. So this is a more efficient way, is to help these countries get on their own feet and deal with their own issues through our aid. That would help stem immigration because people would be in less desperate straits. This is very similar to the issue with the vaccine. If we do not allow the countries that have less access to the vaccine to have the vaccine, then they're going to most likely have variants that our vaccines are not ready for, and this will keep spiraling. It's very similar to that. And keep in mind, the less we do about actual climate change, the worse this is going to get. So now, what are the other reforms? Joe Biden is pushing a immigration package that will come out soon, but what that would lead to a pathway to citizenship. That's part of it. You need a reform to the system and a pathway to citizenship for the people who are already here. Currently, the only Republican plan is the Marjorie Taylor Greene plan that says we will allow no immigration for the entirety of the Joe Biden term, which is such a lack of understanding of how our country works. She would decimate the entirety of our economy. So unlike Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has no idea what's going on, let me explain what's going on. If you block all immigration for 4 years, all the people who work at these immigration jobs, who work for the farmers, who work for the seasonal jobs, who have these companies that produce a lot of money because they use illegal labor, that would collapse massive sections of our economy. This is the same thing that happened when they tried to label it as a caravan. What it was seasonal workers coming up to do these jobs that nobody else wants to do. And there have been studies on this, that even Americans who are paid above minimum wage, they're given great health care, they'll only do these jobs for a few days, but these migrants are more willing to do these jobs. So this is not a solution. The solution has to be, one, get these kids out of the detention centers and into stable families, into who are going to sponsor them as fast as possible. And that's being done by FEMA and pushing for more judges and things like that. Two, telling people not to come. They're doing that. That is currently happening. They're saying, listen, please stop coming. We're currently dealing with a lot. We will allow our immigration will go back to previous levels before Donald Trump, but we can't do it right now. That's just how it is. Because this is a lot of the problems now, is that Joe Biden is just returning back to the status quo that we've had for a long time, and that even that hasn't been an effective way to do this. The problem was the Trump administration slashed immigration to the bone so that any type of uptick looks like just a massive uptick because of how poor and how little immigration we had prior to this. So they're doing both of those things. Reinstating aid would be a way to help this, to allow the countries to handle their own people and make their people more willing to stay there. Allowing people to claim asylum in our embassies would be another way for the Joe Biden to do this, because then they don't have to come to America to do it. They can do it in the embassies, and then they would be able to stay there while the embassies processed all their paperwork and stuff. And then finally would be whatever the immigration reform package is. Now, I don't know totally what the immigration reform package is. It hasn't really been pushed out yet. But the Republican Party, as it stands, is going to say whatever it is going to destroy our current laws, and is going to allow for mass immigration of illegals, and it's going to be amnesty. Now, a pathway to citizenship is not amnesty. It's a pathway to citizenship. It's something that's desperately needed, because the other option is these people live in the shadows forever, and they just keep being exploited. So it's a very necessary thing. So ultimately, what's going on at the border? We are dealing with a crisis. Is it entirely Joe Biden's fault? No. Is it entirely Donald Trump's fault? No. Is it something that he should have seen coming? Yes. Is it something that they're going to have to focus on? Yes. Is it something that he is going to be able to solve right away? Probably not. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the country is dealing with a whole bunch of issues. The first month of his presidency was simply just dealing with COVID. While this current crisis is going on at the border, he apparently wants to do an infrastructure bill. He wants to do gun control. He wants to do protecting our democracy from the massive voter fraud that doesn't exist, but they're basing these laws on that anyway. So there's a lot of different problems that Joe Biden has to fix, and the problem is they can't do any of these things until they do something about the filibuster, because under any circumstance, it is almost impossible to get 10 Republicans to agree with you, because as we saw just in the COVID package, which had 75% approval rating, 0 Republicans voted for it, either in the House or the Senate. So once again, if you like this video and you like what I do, please follow me, like and subscribe here, and follow me on Twitter @FacesIdeas. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.